What if someone truly built a machine that could bend time? Would you believe that he vanished inside his own experiment, only to return decades later with a warning about the end of the world? It all began with a young engineer said to have opened the first crack in the fabric of time. He disappeared under mysterious circumstances, then reappeared with claims that sent chills through the scientific community. This is the strange journey of the man who dared to challenge the laws of time. And the message he left behind may be the first sign of an impending apocalypse. It all began in 1995, in the quiet town of Stanberry, Missouri. Mike "Madman" Markham, a 21-year-old amateur engineer, lived alone in a cluttered storage shed filled with tangled wires, broken televisions, and piles of salvaged electronics. He wasn't a trained scientist, nor did he hold any advanced degree, but he was consumed by one obsession: to control electromagnetism and plasma energy. Mike believed electricity wasn't just an invisible force, but something that could shake the very
another
structure
filed a
of
report
space
that
and
got
time.
immediately classified.
The idea made people call him crazy, but it also pushed him to cross a line that no one else dared to. One quiet night, he built a simple device known as a Jacob's ladder. Two metal rods shaped like a V connected to a high-voltage power source. When he flipped the switch, a blue plasma arc began to climb between the rods, hissing like bottled lightning. Unsatisfied, Mike decided to modify it. He pulled a laser diode from an old CD player and positioned it between the rods, hoping the focused beam would stabilize the arc and amplify the electromagnetic reaction. Then something impossible happened. Between the rods, a small spherical distortion appeared, shimmering like the air above asphalt on a hot summer day. Mike stepped back, watching in disbelief. Years later, on the late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM, he would describe it simply: it looked like space itself was tearing open. Curious, he tossed a steel screw into the distortion. It vanished, then clattered to the floor a few seconds later. He tried again. The same result. Gone, then back. No one could explain it, but Mike became convinced that he had just witnessed matter slipping out of the normal flow of time, something no laboratory on Earth had ever recorded. From that moment on, reason gave way to obsession. Each night, the blue glow from Mike's shed lit up the neighborhood, accompanied by crackling noises and the sharp scent of ozone. Neighbors claimed to see small metal objects pulled into the light and disappear. In his notebook, Mike scrawled one chilling line: "If objects can return, maybe people can too." That was the moment science turned into belief. And that belief would lead him to a place from which no one has ever come back. That's right. Mike began to believe he had discovered the mechanism behind teleportation, through space or even through time, by manipulating rotating electromagnetic fields. But his machine was far too weak. To keep the vortex stable for more than a few seconds, he needed more power, hundreds of times more. With no funding and no permission, Mike made a disastrous choice. One night in January 1996, he and two friends broke into a local power station in King City, Missouri, and stole 6 industrial transformers. When he connected them to his Jacob's ladder system, the voltage surged. Within minutes of activation, the entire town of Stanberry went dark. Witnesses reported seeing a flash of blue light burst from Mike's house before the whole neighborhood was plunged into darkness. A loud explosion followed, and seconds later, the city's power grid collapsed. Police quickly traced the cause. Mike was arrested and sentenced to 60 days in jail and 5 years of probation for stealing electrical equipment and illegally tapping into the power supply. In prison, he showed no remorse. On toilet paper and the backs of letters, He redrew the schematics of his machine, filled with crude electromagnetic formulas. A fellow inmate later recalled, he said he was going to do it again. This time, the door would be big enough for a person. When Mike was released at the end of 1996, he told a local news crew one thing before walking away. "I'm going to prove that time can bend." No one realized then, he meant it literally. After his release, Mike became a sensation in the paranormal radio scene when he appeared on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Millions of listeners heard his story, and many believed him. Some sent money, others mailed parts, and a few amateur physicists even helped him redesign the system. By early 1997, Mike had built a new version of the device inside a warehouse in Overland Park, Kansas. The machine stood nearly 8 feet tall, with opposing magnetic rings spinning in reverse directions, creating what he called a plasma tornado, a swirling vortex of energy suspended in midair. Witnesses described the scene when the device powered on. The air started to vibrate. There was this humming, like 1,000 bees, and then a blue light began to spiral. The whole room turned into a distorted mirror. Mike stepped toward the vortex, watching it twist and pulse like an opening doorway. He said quietly, "If it works, I'll just go through for a few seconds." A blinding flash filled the room. The sound vanished, and Mike Markham was gone. When police arrived the next morning, they found only a circular scorch mark on the concrete floor, several charred components, and a half-burned note that read, "It's not about time, it's about how you see things." From that moment on, Mike Markham was officially erased from U.S. public records in 1997. No one saw him again. No one ever heard his voice. So, did he die that night? Or did he step through the doorway he created himself? It seemed like everything was over. But in November 2022, nearly 30 years after his mysterious disappearance in 1997, the name Mike Markham resurfaced in a way no one could have imagined. In a quiet suburb of Ohio, a young couple, Andrew and Melanie, had just moved into an old wooden house on the edge of the forest. While cleaning the attic, they stumbled upon a heavy, dust-covered wooden box sealed with an iron lock. Carved faintly into the lid were the words, "M. Mark Markham, do not open until the right time." At first, they assumed it was just a prank left behind by a previous owner. But when the lock finally snapped open, a blast of cold air rushed out, carrying with it a sharp ozone scent, the unmistakable smell of burnt electricity. It was identical to the descriptions found in old radio transcripts of Mike's plasma experiments. Inside the box were 3 strange objects: a thick notebook filled with hand-drawn electromagnetic diagrams, a charred circuit board soaked in oil, and a faded Polaroid photograph. In the photo stood a young man beside a metallic frame emitting a soft blue glow, something eerily similar to the plasma doorway Mike had once described. On the back of the photo, written in blue ink, were the words, "June 21st, 2021. It did work, but not the way I thought it would." Andrew, an electrical engineer by trade, recognized the circuit design as belonging to technology from the 1990s. But there were strange symbols mixed in, seemingly combining Tesla coil principles with plasma vortex dynamics. When he searched the name M. Mark Markham online, thousands of results appeared. Old newspaper clippings, coast-to-coast AM recordings, and countless forum threads about the man who built a time machine and vanished inside it. 2 weeks later, on a cold, rainy night, someone knocked on their door. Standing on the porch was a frail old man in a gray coat, his hair snow-white, his eyes sunken, his voice trembling. "My name is Mike Markham." Police were called immediately, and fingerprint analysis left investigators stunned. It was a perfect match to the man who had vanished in 1997. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that his biological age was about 45, though chronologically, he should have been nearly 70. He had no residence records, no driver's license, no bank account. For 25 years, it was as if he had never existed. Mike spoke calmly. "I didn't go anywhere. I slipped out of time. When I woke up, I was in Oregon in 1999. No one knew me and I couldn't prove who I was." He kept repeating one phrase, the geomagnetic loop, and issued a haunting warning. When Earth stops breathing, humanity will forget it ever existed. Most dismissed him as delusional, but electromagnetic researchers noticed a peculiar consistency in his statements. Mike repeatedly referenced the number 7.83 Hertz, the Schumann resonance, known as Earth's natural heartbeat. In the recovered notebook was a chilling line. When Schumann resonance drops below 7.5, human memory desynchronizes. If that was true, Mike wasn't talking about spirituality, but about physics itself. That when Earth's natural frequency changes, human consciousness could fall out of sync, causing time itself to slip out of alignment. And now, we dive into those chaotic notes. Words once dismissed as the ravings of a madman who bent time. Because even though the scientific community never recognized his work, the numbers, patterns, and warnings scribbled in that notebook match disturbingly well with data the world is witnessing today. There are three main hypotheses surrounding Mike Markham's cryptic statements, and if even one of them proves correct, it could redefine how humanity understands time, magnetism, and existence itself. After Mike's reappearance, countless amateur physicists began dissecting every detail of the Jacob's Ladder machine he had once built. A research group on the Chrono Loop Forum 2023 proposed that Mike's plasma experiment may have created a microscopic rupture in space-time itself, a time rift, similar to what quantum field theory calls a space-time fluctuation. They pointed out that when a rotating electric field reaches extreme intensity, its energy can compress local space, bending the paths of photons and electrons, a phenomenon reminiscent of the theoretical Alcubierre warp drive, which manipulates space-time curvature to enable faster-than-light motion. If true, Mike's plasma machine didn't just generate electricity, it warped the fabric of space-time around it. Some physicists dubbed it a miniature time reactor. When energy exceeds the stability threshold, the plasma field could expand outward, disrupting subatomic space and creating what theory calls a micro-time rift. The hypothesis claims that if Mike ever pushed his device to full power, the energy zone could have spiraled out like a vortex, triggering a global temporal slip event, where every clock and physical timeline on Earth would desynchronize simultaneously. Mike's cryptic phrase, "It's not about time, it's about how you see things," was reinterpreted as a physical metaphor. Not that time was bending, but that human perception itself had fallen out of phase with reality. Researchers named the phenomenon temporal field divergence, a split between two overlapping layers of existence. Perhaps Mike had seen both realities and simply stepped between them. While some researchers believe Mike was talking about time, others argue he was speaking about Earth itself. In the recovered notebook, he wrote, "When magnetic field collapses, the loop begins." That line eerily coincides with data from NASA and the European Space Agency, showing that Earth's magnetic field has weakened by nearly 9% in the past 200 years. 10 times faster than the average rate. When the magnetic field collapses, the north and south poles switch places, a phenomenon known as geomagnetic reversal. At that moment, Earth's magnetic shield would vanish, solar radiation would pour directly into the atmosphere, burning through the ozone layer, crippling power grids, and destroying satellites and global GPS systems. Geological records show that the last time this occurred was 780,000 years ago, and geophysicists warn that Earth is already long overdue for the next reversal. Some theorize that while creating his plasma vortex, Mike accidentally replicated the very spiral structure of the planet's magnetic field, causing his experiment to resonate with the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of Earth. Remarkably, his disappearance in 1997 coincided with NOAA's report of the lowest Schumann resonance level of the 20th century. If true, Mike didn't trigger an apocalypse, but rather activated Earth's natural resonance point, pushing the planet into a new electromagnetic phase. In that case, he wasn't a time traveler, but the first person to make Earth itself shift phase. The final piece of evidence came from a Polaroid photo discovered in an attic in Ohio. On the back, faint blue ink reads, June 21st, 2021. It did work, but not the way I thought it would. If genuine, this photograph could document Mike Markham's final activation attempt. Coincidentally, 2021 was the year when the entire world felt as if time had stopped. The pandemic left billions in isolation, stripping away the sense of day and night, month and year. A Stanford University study in 2022 found that 63% of participants admitted they had lost all sense of personal time flow. That same year, social networks were flooded with reports of collective déjà vu, visual glitches, and overlapping memories. People called it the silent reset, a quiet reboot of time itself. Mike's followers believed this was the very loop he warned about, that after 2021 we are no longer living in the original timeline, but have drifted into a parallel branch where everything repeats with microscopic errors. The world we inhabit may only be the duplicate, history's second iteration. In 2024, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the European Space Agency launched ChronoScan, an AI system using deep learning to restore burned or damaged handwritten records. When applied to Mike's notebook, the AI found that his electromagnetic values matched global magnetic field fluctuation models from 2023 with 99.6% accuracy. More astonishingly, when scanning the faded text beneath the phrase, "It's not about time," the system revealed a hidden line. 2025 magnetic collapse, phase 2. Just months later, ESA confirmed that the South Atlantic anomaly, the weakest magnetic region on the planet, was expanding at an unprecedented rate. The coincidence stunned the scientific community. One ESA physicist stated, "If Markham really wrote these equations back in 1997, then our entire understanding of the relationship between electromagnetism and time must be rewritten." Many began to believe Mike wasn't delusional at all, but perhaps the first to foresee the collapse of the very temporal framework humanity exists within. After ChronoScan's findings were released, the scientific world split in two. Half dismissed the results as random coincidence between electromagnetic models, while the other half believed Mike Markham had touched something beyond human comprehension. Because if the phrase 2025 magnetic collapse phase 2 truly originated in 1997, then either he saw the future or he caused it. Physicists call this the origin paradox, when one's action in the present becomes the cause of its own future outcome. And if the geomagnetic loop Mike described is real, it would mean our world is entering a closed cycle where time is no longer linear, but rotating within Earth's own electromagnetic structure. The last page of his notebook contained only a single line. Time doesn't move forward. It repeats itself until someone notices. Perhaps he never traveled through time at all. Perhaps he simply realized that we are the ones traveling every second, every moment, through the same reality, repeating endlessly within Earth's cycle. And the phase 2 he mentioned, the global magnetic collapse, may not be the apocalypse we fear, but the planet's natural reboot mechanism, returning everything to zero to begin again. 30 years ago, Mike Markham warned of a geomagnetic loop. Now, AI suggests it might truly be happening. If Earth is entering the next magnetic collapse phase, could this be the beginning of the doomsday he foresaw? Leave a comment. Do you believe Mike Markham was insane, or the only person who truly saw the collapse of time itself? And in the next episode, we'll decode humanity's next great secret.